Yeah, yeah. You are. Wow. It's kind of nice. Once in a while.
So how's your semester so far? Good?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't taught this semester. I'm not teaching actually. I just have too much travel.
You're on sabbatical?
No, just lots of travel.
Okay.
Various places because of the AI interest in AI and so on. So yeah. Yeah, no, I think if it actually was a semester, I would have probably not been able to do this. It would be right now. Would be the the crunch time for us.
Okay.
This one.
So you just need to reprogram?
We tried, right?
Yes. This is one for another room. 258. They have different channels.
Nick, would a wireless from a different classroom work? Okay.
I mean, it's a small enough room that it's okay if I don't have the.
Okay.
thing. It should be
We
fine.
have another
Most
one.
times, actually people are going to listen
This
to
one's
the
working.
translation.
Yeah.
As long as they can hear.
So that's fine. Yeah, no, that's fine then. Actually,
Okay.
I think it's okay.
Okay.
You can tell her that.
Okay,
It's
那我们就开始了。
A lavalier. And then there should be a handheld in here, you said?
可以，然后可以，就可以。他们大概什么，我们就现在开始。
他的分析到底是为什么？
因为那个
是，我知道你的意思，他根本就跟这个没有那个。
没问，我用这个时候就经常。
他这个是 work，这个是这个的。
对。OK。
Are all this from
No, we just have to speak up. We're good without it.
Motivated Shanghai?
Yeah.
That's the one place I haven't
We're
been.
good with that. I'm gonna stop because I want
We
to start
deliver
the
our
other.
courses in Shanghai, China. Before coming to Phoenix, I think I put in the email quickly. So they spend like 2 days in Washington
Oh, they did. Okay.
and listen to a lot of political seminars.
So they are
Conference.
planning to what?
They're looking for professionals and they are taking this executive MBA program. So all our courses are on weekends, like our full-time MBA and executive MBA.
好，OK，有请。
好了，同学们，安静一下。我们现在这个下面呢，我们有幸邀请到Dr. Zabaro
campaign party。
给我们做关于 AI 方面的演讲。这位教授呢是1989年从马里兰大学计算机系毕业的，30年。然后1991年来到了在亚利桑那州立大学，就是在我们的这个计算机与工程学院里边担任教授。在之间呢是在斯坦福大学做了2年的研究，是从89年到91年。他在这个方面的研究呢 ，AI 方面研究呢是确实是 frontier， 因为是非常前沿的。我之所以想到了他呢，是因为我们在看我们 ASU 都有这个 ASU 的新闻研究新闻。去年今年年初的时候，看到研究里面是讲他做的关于这个 AI 研究最前沿的一些东西，我觉得很有意思，因为到最后就是人和机器之间的这个问题，说这个 AI， 所以呢，我就想邀请他给我们大家来讲一下关于这个人工智能以及和人工智能所面临的一些挑战。好，我们现在欢迎教授开讲。
大家把这个手机静下来，好吧？听着我认真一点，不要打。
可以睡觉，不要打。
Okay. So this is going to be fun. I speak too fast typically, and I'm told. How many of you sort of understand English?
我其实被告知哈，我经常的语速非常快。我想知道的话呢，大家有多少人是会英语
Just to give me an idea.
至少可以听英语。
Okay. So I guess we'll have to go slow, like you said, and I will try. And this is, it'll be interesting. But if you have questions, please feel free to stop us and ask questions. It's anyways in a classroom setting. So I am Subbarao. So I am Subbarao Kambhampati, and I'm at Arizona State University. And if you either before or after the talk, if you need to get in touch with me, those are the places you can get in touch with me. But I know you're all from Shanghai, so all you really care about is WeChat. So that's my WeChat. I actually have lots and lots of friends in China. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. So in fact, apparently I have better contacts in China than I have in the US because most of the time when I went to give talks, and I wind up having very interesting people get in touch with us. So anyway, we'll see how far this goes.
然后这个下面就是老师的联系的信息，那么他还有他的微信，那么其实他在微信上面已经有很多的好友了，这是为什么呢？因为他是经常去中国被邀请去发表演讲啊讲座，在那里的话遇到了很多很有意思的人，很多有意思的同行。
Okay, that's great. Actually, I think I should put my recording next to you because I will have a China version of this talk. Okay. So let's see. How many of you have heard of artificial intelligence?
有多少人听过人工智能 AI 的？请举手好吗？
不要客气。
Okay. Wow. So that's very surprising. I thought in China, in fact, pretty much everybody is crazy about artificial intelligence. I have gone to what were supposed to be small meetings to give talks, and there will be like 6,000 people. So it's like, very interested in AI in general there. So in that, go ahead.
所以在中国的话呢，每次去就是讲 AI 的话，大家都非常的这个疯狂，也很想知道。而且有时候我们只是做一个小范围的会议，结果一来就来了6000人了，可看这个对他的热情。
So there's a lot of public discussion and hype about AI. In fact, I tend to think of this as AI is bigger than you can suppose. It's bigger than you can suppose. Apparently, there's just so much hype that people can't even believe how much you can make of AI right now. People have compared AI to the new electricity. It's been compared to both fire and electricity. It's been compared to God. Every possible product has to use AI technology of late. This one is a smart electronic toothbrush. which uses apparently AI technology. So everything right now must advertise itself as it is using AI technology.
现在 AI 的话真的非常热哈，上面那句话就是说 AI 的比你想到的还要更厉害，然后比你想不到的话更厉害啊，就是说，然后有很多人对 AI 有很多的讨论啊，有些人就是说 AI 的话将是未来的这个电力，人人都需要，或者说 AI 的话呢比这个以后的火啊，还有这个电啊就更加重要，这个是谷歌的这个 CEO 皮差说的哈。然后还有人的话呢，就是业内人士把 AI 比作上帝。然后现在任何的产品，只要你去营销，它都要说它是智能的加了 AI 的哈。
So these are all the nice things that people are talking about AI, and there's also all the worries. AI is a bigger threat, apparently, than North Korea, and it will start the Third World War, according to Elon Musk, who is one of our very sedate industrialists. And then AI could be the worst event in the history of civilization. This is the late Stephen Hawking, the physicist. And then, of course, Musk again comes back to say that AI is highly likely to destroy humans anyway. So this is like the both hugely positive sort of a hype and extremely negative sort of concerns that sort of give you a sense of where AI public perceptions are.
那么当然对 AI 的话呢，也有很多的恐惧论哈。比方说，有人说 AI 的话带来的威胁比北韩带来的还要大，还有人说的话呢 ，AI 就像那个马斯克，就是 Tesla 的马斯克，就是说 AI 的话会带来第3次的人类战争。还有人说这 AI 的话呢，是我们世界上就是这个我们人类文明史上最糟糕的一次事件。然后马斯克还说了 ，AI 的话未来肯定会毁灭人类。所以你看到在 AI 方面有正面的一个看法，也有很多负面的看法。
Okay, so well, this is where things are, and I've actually been working in AI as a field since I was an undergraduate in 1989. Many of you were probably not born at that point of time. So we are sort of scratching our heads at this level of craze. Both negative and positive about AI. I should not be complaining too much. In fact, we are in the universities, and supposedly universities are supposed to be the more reasonable places. Not surprisingly, MIT actually said that they're going to start an entire college just for AI. CMU is going to start an undergraduate program just for AI. You guys have put AI in high school textbooks. I don't know how many of you have gotten those textbooks. If not, your kids definitely are reading them. India is putting AI in middle school, whatever that is. So clearly, at ASU, we consider ourselves the new American university. And so we have realized this is too little, too late. And so we have started the in utero AI program, where essentially kids, even before they are born, can learn about AI. So it's sort of, that's a level of hype that's there with respect to AI. I hope you guys realize that this is not true, but the other stuff is actually true.
那么讲到 AI 的话呢，其实我从89年的时候，在本科生的时候就开始研究这一领域了哈。那个时候可能大部分在座都还没出生呢，所以看到现在 AI 的话呢，突然间在公共视野中变得这么的这个热的话呢，有时候也让我有点就是觉得有点惊奇啊。然后这个各个大学的话呢，也是积极的响应。比方说 MIT 的话呢，它就会在就专门开了一个，然后就是本科的一个，对吧？专门开了一个研究生院，就是专门的 AI 研究生院。然后的话呢，卡内基梅就 CMU 的话呢，他说要开一个 AI 的本科课程。那么我知道在这个中国的话呢，据说 AI 已经进了高中生的这个教科书的课本。那么在印度的话呢，他们初中的时候就已经把这些内容放到他们的教学内容中去了哈。那么我们作为 ASU 作为一个最新式的大学哈，我们觉得也绝对能不甘人扣，而且其他大学的做法的话都已经太晚了，所以我们决定的话呢，就开始一个子宫 AI 课程啊。在小孩还没有出生妈妈肚子里的时候，我们就给他就是做一个 AI， 让他一出来的时候就能接受这样的一个 AI 的环境。当然这是玩笑哈。
他说最后一个是玩笑，其他
最后一个是玩笑。
So this reminds me of the times when somebody will tell me a joke, and after half an hour I realize that it's a funny joke, and I start laughing. That's what I find here is going on right now. But it's fun. It's a new multiverse right now. By the way, I think hopefully when AI technology works well, as we'll talk about later, hopefully it will be simultaneous translation. There is this. Again, I guess the audience here may not get it, but there is Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy, which talks about Babelfish, and you can put in a Babelfish in your ear, and everything is simultaneously translated. Hopefully that will happen when we go forward. But continuing along, I shouldn't complain too much with this craze for AI. So I have, where else will we get AI nerds going to be on the TVs, getting into the White House, and most importantly, being called to visit China all over the place. So you can see I get paid to go to Great Wall. That's kind of nice and fun.
对，刚才讲的那个笑话的话呢，就是别人有时候别人家跟我讲的笑话的话，我过了半个小时再体验过来哈，所以翻译的话就是这样有个延时。我讲的笑话可能大家等10分钟翻译完之后才看到。希望以后的话呢，就是 AI 能够很进步，到时候的话呢，我们可能戴个耳机就可以实时的这个同传过来。希望那天快点到来。然后作为一个 AI 领域的这个研究者的话呢，我经常就是会被邀请到什么白宫啊，或者各大会议啊，去给讲座。然后我有很多的时间会被邀请到中国去看美丽的中国的长城啊、兵马俑啊。
So now this craze about the hype about AI sort of happened to coincide with my term as the president of the American Association for Advancement of Artificial Intelligence. It's only correlation, not causation. I didn't cause the hype, but like anybody else, I like to take complete credit for it. And so I feel as if I have made AI great again.
那么的话，我的话呢也有一个职务哈，我是这个美国这个这个 AI 研究协会的这个主席哈。虽然说我当主席的时候正好遇上 AI 的这样一个热潮来临哈，虽然可能不是真的是我的功绩，但是我就把它归功于，因为是我当了这个主席哈，还是挺热的，所以我到时候的话，因为我是主席，我就做了个帽子，然后这帽子上面写了，就是让 AI 变得再次伟大，跟那个川普的一样，是那个，就让美国更加伟大，让 AI 更加伟大。
Okay, so much for fun. The agenda that I'm trying to do today, except I assume I may have to shorten parts of it because of the simultaneous translation that's going to take place. But I'm going to go through like these 4 pieces. What just happened, exactly why is everybody talking so much about artificial intelligence? And then, are we done? Is it just waiting for AI to take over the world? And say a little, depending on the time, about my own research in this area, which is getting AI systems to work with humans. It turns out that working with each other is much harder than working by ourselves, as most of us will realize. And so getting AI systems to work with humans winds up, producing all sorts of interesting challenges. And then I kind of will end with a bunch of thoughts on managing risks and rewards of AI. These are things that you would have probably heard about, such as technological unemployment, what's going to happen if AI systems are going to be doing massive surveillance, which is actually a huge problem in all parts of the world, including in China. And so we might want to talk about that, and then I'll end it.
那么今天的话呢，局势要讲的有4大内容哈，可能由于时间的限制的话，可能我要跳过一些 PPT。那么第一部分的话呢，就是说现在这个 AI 这么热呢，到底现在 AI 的话呢是怎么样一个状况呢？第二就是说 AI 出现了，那么人类是不是注定就是要被 AI 所取代呢？哈。第3个的话呢，就是说 AI 的话，就是如果我们能够让 AI 和人类进行协作的话，那其实这个效果会更好。那这个也是我的研究领域，我也想跟大家说，要机器和人去协作的话呢，其实是非常难做到的。 那么最后一部分的话呢，我就想讲就是我是怎么样看管理 AI 它带来的好处以及 AI 带来的这个风险。比方说现在 AI 据说很多人说可能会取代很多人的就业啊，还有说 AI 以后的话呢会大型的进行一个就是监察监视这样的话呢可能对不仅是在美国这边还有全球包括在中国的话其实都会造成很大的社会影响。
Okay, so let's start with just a little definition of what in computer science, when people talk about artificial intelligence, they talk about getting machines to do things that when done by humans would be considered intelligent behavior. There's a bit of a circularity. But that's the way, that's a way of understanding artificial intelligence and what it's trying to do. Technically, it turns out is basically designing something like this, an agent with a whole bunch of black boxes trying to work in the real world the way you and I work. Okay.
然后这一页是想讲我们在计算机科学中怎么样对这个 AI 进行定义。基本上来说呢，就是说如果这个 AI 可以做到人类可以做到的事情的话呢，我们就把它叫做这种有智能的一种行为，这就是这个 AI。然后 AI 的话呢，它如果讲到技术上的结构来说它就是我们这个图中所显示的这个结构。那么 AI 的话，它作为一个执行者然后它就是想怎么样通过就是吸取各样的数据做决策然后能够在真实的人类的就是人类所真实这个环境中来执行一些行动。
So since typically this is sort of a little too abstract and technical, I try to get people understand what's going on in AI by using this slide, which is basically how little kids, when they come into the world, how do they show various kinds of intelligent behavior?
那么 AI 的话，有时候可能会过于技术性，所以我用这张的话来跟大家解释一下比方说，想想我们人类的这个小孩他慢慢长大的这个过程中，怎么样一步一步获得各种智能的。
So a little kid like this, when they come into the world, they first see the world. They are able to look at their mom's face and smile. Kids who don't recognize their moms aren't around because they probably didn't get any care and they passed away. And then they do the recognition of faces, images. They also start doing manipulation. This kid, who is actually a student of the daughter of one of my wife's students, I remember we went to a nice restaurant one day, and I could see her using little things. Every little thing she can very carefully hold it, put it into her mouth. Okay, we do not have robots that can do this yet. Okay, robots are not able to do that kind of fine motor skills. So they do that too. Perception and ability to manipulate the world.
那首先小孩子的话，他刚刚这个开始的时候他就是会有一些感知的这个能力，就是他能够去识别这个是他妈妈然后他对他妈妈一来抱他就会笑，这种是感知的能力。但是而且他必须得认识他妈妈，如果不认识他的妈妈，见他妈妈不笑的时候，可能就没有好果子吃就是婴儿的这个生存的本能。第二个的话，就是小孩他慢慢的就是会有一种就是用手去触摸世界、去操控世界的能力。这个里面的照片的话，是我妻子的一个学生的小孩有一次我们一块出去吃饭，我就观察这个小孩他用他的小手不断去抓，以各种各样的方式去抓他想要的食物放在嘴里面这个就是小孩慢慢学会怎么样去操纵的一种智能。
So then they will show emotional intelligence, the ability to smile, the ability to cry right times, and so on, and then show social and communicative intelligence, how to work with other kids, how to work with other people, and only finally they start showing what you tend to think of generally when we say intelligence, which is cognitive intelligence, the ability to take exams, ability to do well in standardized tests, the national entrance exams, and so on and so forth. So this is approximately the way kids show intelligent behavior. Please go ahead.
然后慢慢的话呢，小孩就发展了一种叫做情感的这个智能哈，他会笑，然后他会生气，然后接下来的话呢，又发展这种社交和这种沟通的智能，他会跟其他的小孩啊一块玩啊，沟通啊，跟其他人协作啊，然后到最后的话就发展了这种叫做认知和推理的智能，这就是我们一般意义上认为人的智能所在啊，就是说这个能够就是通过考试啊，在考试里做得特别好啊，这种认知和推理的智能是以这样的一条线发展下来的。
So if you look at this, and then the last time AI was in the news, everybody would have AI talks. For anybody concerned, was back in 1980s, when there was a big hype about what are called expert systems, which are these rule-based systems that will essentially look at how various businesses run their operations, and then sort of automate those operations. In 90s, we had Deep Blue, which is this first chess program that defeated the world champion of chess, Garry Kasparov. And it's only very recently, starting 2000s, actually starting around 2012, that computers could actually do perception, that is, looking at the world and touching the world, and maybe able to manipulate little things, physical things in the world. Please go ahead.
那么讲到 AI 的话，大家可能是记得最早听到 AI 是在80年代的时候，那个时候的话呢，有一个叫做专家系统哈，它是一个基于规则的一个系统，主要是帮助企业的话呢，来把他们很多的流程都去进行自动化的。那么进到90年代的时候的话呢，我们有了一个叫做深蓝哈，深蓝的系统大家应该记得。然后当时它是有一个推理，它是一个推理的系统。当时的话呢，深蓝跟这个世界象棋冠军下象棋，下象棋，然后就赢了这个卡斯帕罗夫这个俄罗斯的这个象棋王。到进化到00年的时候的话呢，现在的这个人工智能它就可以做很多感知的任务了，它可以看这个世界，它可以触碰，它可以操纵
So if you look at this and you look back at our old picture, the previous picture, you notice that the babies went from perception first to much later doing cognitive intelligence, the kinds of expert rules and so on. And what I showed you is that the AI systems went in the opposite direction. We were able to do expert systems, we were able to do chess, we could win chess much before systems can even recognize a chess piece. Okay? Which is not the way humans develop, but that's the way computers develop intelligent behavior. And I believe that understanding this distinction actually is very useful in understanding what happened in AI, which is the very next slide, which is like a very busy slide, but let her complete this translation and then we'll get there.
所以的话，大家是可以注意到人的话，先开始我们智力的发展是通过触摸然后再慢慢一步步的进发到我们有推理的这个能力。但 AI 的话是正好相反，它一开始的话呢是具有这种推理的这个能力比方说这个企业的自动化的系统还有后来下象棋的系统，它会下象棋，但是那时候 AI 的话深蓝它还不能够认识到原来它在下的是那个棋子，它只知道怎么下象棋，所以它是从推理这个能力发展开来的所以这对真正的认识 AI 的话呢，这是非常重要的，希望大家能够记起来。
Okay, so this is basically this distinction that humans went one direction and the computer systems went in the other direction, I believe explains a lot about how and why AI developed this way. This is a sort of a very dense slide. I'm going to go slowly on this. But let me first stop and say that if there is any questions at any point of time, please tell her, please stop us, and then I'm happy to answer the questions.
对，接下来你可能会问了，为什么 AI 的话是先有推理能力，对吧？这一页我就要讲的。还有就是说，大家如果有任何问题的话，那请举手这样我也知道大家想知道什么。
Okay, so let's talk about these two pieces. One, this side we're talking about why did AI develop in the reverse direction from the way human babies show their intelligence. Okay, we'll understand that first, and then we'll talk about wide AI card public imagination, which is the second part. So in this case, the thing to understand about this is to get computers to do something. We need to, typical way of doing it is we understand that task ourselves very well and we write a program so that the computers will do that. To be able to do that, the knowledge about doing that task should be consciously accessible to us. We should know how we do it. Please go ahead.
简单的来说，就是说，我们如果想要这个机器去做一件任务的话，首先我们的人是要非常有意识的知道这个事情是怎么一步步做出来的，对吧？所以这样子的话呢，我们才能编程，让这个机器理解怎么去做这个。
So it is easier to program computers on aspects of intelligence for which we have conscious theories. And it so happens that if you look at these different kinds of intelligence, the way we look at the world, we have no idea how we look at the world. How do I decide that this is a person or this is a computer by just looking at it? Whereas I know the rules about how to play chess. I have some rules about how my company is supposed to be run. There are certain things that we have conscious understanding. Certain other things, we just do it tacitly, subconsciously.
很简单嘛，举个例子，比方说我们都知道怎么下象棋，对吧？象棋的这个规则，我们也知道怎么样去管理公司，有一些标准的流程，这些我们就很容易把它编程，让机器知道怎么做。但是说，你说我们作为一个人比如我们看这个世界的世界观，比方我看到这个，看到那个我知道是这个电脑，看到这个我知道是杯子，这个我也说不出来，我为什么知道它是杯子或者电脑这种像这样的一种。这样的任务就很难把它就是很清楚的说出来，或者很难把它编程，这也是为什么AI 就是先开始推理的。
So for things like cognitive intelligence, we could write programs for the computers and they just follow it. So that was one part of AI. But things like perception, we don't know how we look at the world. We don't quite know how we are supposed to hold something. We just do it. Okay, for those kinds of things, we had to wait for the same kind of techniques that kids use, which is, I know, you may have realized that kids basically hang around doing nothing, being cute for lots and lots of years, just looking at the world and trying to understand what's going on. And so they sort of learn without being told. Okay, and that's the only thing you can have machines do too, because machines also have to learn from just examples to do things like perception. This way.
还有像这种感知的能力这种，所以说我看到这个杯子是杯子的话呢，其实这种都是一种无意识的或者下意识的一种，它是一种叫做隐性的这种知识。像我们的小孩从小的时候，他其实也不做什么，就坐在那里。就是很可爱的在那里他是其实的话他在不断的在学习，他去感知这个世界。所以的话，机器它也不是一上来他就知道怎么去感知这个世界，它必须要去慢慢一步一步的学习。
So it's this piece, that ability to learn from data, that happened more recently, starting about 7 years back. We're doing it much better than we were able to do before, and a huge reason for that turns out to be web. And we are all connected. We post pictures of things, we post audio of things, we post lots and lots of examples from the world, and that can be used by computers to learn.
那么其实机器要怎么学习的话呢，就是从数据中学习。那么在过去7年之间的话呢，我们收集了很大量的这个数据，就是得益于我们有了互联网大家通过互联网的话，上传了很多，不管是文本图像还有各种音频、视频，这些的话都作为数据和样本，可以为机器所去学习
So this guy Carl Jung, who is a psychologist, talked about this notion of collective subconscious. All of us share some knowledge just without necessarily talking about it. And there was no way of accessing it before. But web essentially allows us to put all of it there. So web becomes a repository of our collective subconscious from which machines can learn.
不知道大家有没有听过心理学家荣格哈，他就是提出了一个概念叫做集体无意识哈，我们所有的全人类哈，就是在我们把很多的这种隐性的知识哈都放在了一起，就形成了一个无意识，大家是共享这个无意识，叫做集体无意识。那么得益于互联网的这个产生哈，大家把所有的这些东西，刚才说的东西都上传到互联网，所以在网上这个互联网上面就形成了一个我们所有人类无意识的样本。
So the other part of the equation is so AI was doing cognitive intelligence. We are winning in chess, machines were winning over humans in chess starting around 97. But you didn't remember this kind of a hype about AI in those days. So the question is, why did suddenly AI catch public imagination now?
所以你可能觉得很奇怪啊，深蓝在90年代的时候就可以下象棋，下过了这个国际棋手了。为什么到现在这个时候 AI 才突然间出现在我们公众的视野里面，变得这么热呢？
So a way of understanding it is that early AI was a blind and deaf Socrates. It can do cognition, but doesn't know how to see the world, doesn't know how to touch the world. And so if the day after Kasparov was defeated by Deep Blue, one day you felt good about it. If you're still alive in 97, you felt, wow, okay, the chess is also gone. But the next day your life didn't change much, because how does it matter that the chess champion is no longer the chess champion? But now you have cell phones which can see pictures and recognize, which can do approximately good voice recognition, which can take image recognition and voice recognition. And so this sort of put the technology, the fruits of AI technology in everybody's hand. And that's one reason why people think a lot about AI technology. Even though all of these intelligences are important, the fact that most recently we wound up making a progress in perception, that wound up being the reason all of you have heard about AI to the extent you have heard.
还有就是说，以前的话 AI 我可以把它比作成一个又聋又哑的苏格拉底就是说他有这个推理的能力，但是他无法去感知或者感知这个世界，看不到也触不到所以以前说这个深蓝打败了这样的一个象棋冠军的话，那离我很远，10万8千里远，他打败了挺好，但也不关我什么事儿。但是现在我们人人都有手机了，手机这个 AI 的话呢，在这个感知的这个智能上面有很长足的进步，所以我们的手机的话呢，就可以说识别我们的声音识别各种各样的图像，它变成了我们每天息息相关的一部分了。这个时候，突然间 AI 的话呢，就出现在我们的视野里面，我们就越来感到 AI 越来越重要了
So, and also that also means that everybody now thinks everything is AI, because they've gotten some idea that their cell phone has AI technology, and we tend to think that if it can recognize cats, today recognition of cats, tomorrow robots take over. So there's a significant amount of hype, partly because everybody thinks they understand AI, and so that's also other reason for the hype.
还有一个就是说，为什么现在觉得人人都觉得什么都要加点 AI 呢？就是说这个 AI 的话，他们就觉得这样手机里面我有这个 AI 的能力，可以给我语音确识别。然后 AI 的话呢，它就是可以，现在它可以分辨什么样的是猫，什么样的是狗了。它未来可能可以做更多的事情所以有时候人们想就越想越夸张，这个也是为什么现在 AI 这么火的原因之一。
And then this actually is a very interesting point. I hope it will get across. We humans tend to have a romance with tacit knowledge. Okay, things that you can't explain how you do, you are much more impressed. My joke is that if your boyfriend or girlfriend ever asks you, why do you like me? And you start writing the reasons down, reason 1, reason 2, reason 3, there goes your relationship. Because people want these things to be inexpressible. And we are a lot more impressed by tacit knowledge. Please go ahead.
还有第3点的话呢，就是人类他觉得你这个说不清道不明的东西，就觉得特别神秘、特别厉害比方我再举一个例子，就是说比方你的女朋友问你说，哎，你为什么爱我如果你拿一张纸出来写第1条、第2条、第3条的话，那他就马上跟你说拜拜了 所以你必须要说的就是，我也不知道我为什么爱你，但是我就说不清道不明，这个时候就觉得特别特别厉害。
So useful knowledge at least is getting across. So in general, when we can understand something in consciously accessible way, the mystery disappears and we feel as if there is a sense of loss. Okay? But on the other hand, civilization progresses by understanding things consciously. Okay? You have to keep both in mind. You have tacit knowledge, but we also look for tasks which have explicit knowledge.
所以说，当一切的东西的话，从这个说不清道不明上升到了你的有意识这个层级的时候，你就突然间觉得它没那么神秘了哈，内心可能会有一种失落感。但虽然这么说，你想想我们人类的文明的进步，不都是因为我们越来越就是认知到了越来越多的事情嘛啊，所以的话呢，在我们这个 AI 世界中，其实就是应该在把这个隐性的知识和这个显性的知识做到一个平衡。
So before I go out of this slide, I'll give, like, if those of you who want to do something in the background, you can consider doing this. Think of various things you do in your life for which you can write how I do this, a paragraph of how I do this. Okay, if you can write that, it is explicit knowledge. There is rules governing it. If you can't write it, you just know how to do it, then it is tacit knowledge. You don't know how to write, how do you swim? How do you bicycle? How do you see a cat and say it's a cat? But on the other hand, you know how to play chess, what the rules of chess are, how your company is supposed to have various constraints that it needs to satisfy to make the shareholders happy, etc.
所以话讲到这个显性知识和隐性知识的话，大家可以做个小练习哈。比方想想你生命中你做的一些事情，你知道怎么做的，你可以把它拿张纸写下来的话呢，这些就是显性的知识。有些东西的话呢，你在生活中做的，但是你不知道怎么样去描述，我怎么会做。比方说骑单车，比方说游泳，比方说我看到这个猫，我就知道它是猫啊，这种你说不清道不明的啊，这种就叫做隐性知识哈。包括管理公司啊，怎么让股东高兴啊，这些的话呢是属于显性知识，你知道怎么做。
Okay, so now what we'll do is go over some of the perceptual technologies that are working and why they are working a little bit. I understand you're not from engineering necessarily, so I'm not going to try to teach you anything beyond certain buzzwords. But one of the things that has become, I mean, if you want to use some buzzwords from AI these days, you have to talk about neural networks and deep learning. Even if you don't know it, I'm sure somebody in your company already knows about this stuff.
然后接下来我想跟大家讲一讲哈，怎么样让这个机器它有这种感知的这个能力，就是我们在研究的 AI 的内容。那这个词儿有些很热的词儿，现在 AI 做的话，主要是叫做一个是神经网络，一个就是叫深度学习哈。大家可能如果没有听过的话，你们公司肯定会有人听，这是最流行的两个词儿。
This technology turns out to be very good for learning tacit knowledge from examples.
这神经网络的话呢，它比较擅长的就是学习这种让机器学习这种隐性的知识。
So this technology actually existed since the time I was born. As you know, it's very, very long back. Okay, and yet it became useful not because of any major theoretical advances, but because of the advances in communication and data capture. So you, as I told you, we have web, which has all our knowledge, plus we have very good computing power, and that's what was needed to make the same theory work in practice.
对这个神经网络的这个的话呢，其实在我出生的时候，它就已经有这个技术了哈，就是不是什么新技术。但是到现在的话，之所以它变得这么的有用的话呢，不是因为说它在这个神经网络技术上有什么特别大的突破，而是因为现在我们有大量的数据，而且我们可以去收集到这个数据。这是第一点。第二点就是说呢，我们这个计算机的这个能力啊，也越来越越来越增强。两点加起来的话呢，就让神经网络变得越来就是特别的有用。
Okay, so let me now show you some examples, some impressive things that this perception technology can do that you may have heard of, or if not, you're hearing now. For example, before computers couldn't do this, now computers can look at pictures and write captions as to what is going on in those pictures.
然后神经网络哈能够训练这个机器它做什么呢？现在可以做一些很厉害的事情。第一个就是看到一张图片的话，它可以去识别这个图片，然后在下面注释说，哎，这张图片是关于什么的？比方说打网球，这个人在打网球啊。
What is more, they can learn the distribution of objects, such as a human face, it turns out, can be seen as a very high dimensional object that lives in some space. And you can learn the distribution of all human spaces. So for example, if you have a picture is nothing but some pixels with their intensity values. Some of these pictures correspond to human faces, many don't. Suppose you want to learn what are the ways human faces look like. You can actually use the current technology, one called generative adversarial networks, to learn to produce human faces. This is a human that doesn't exist. Neither does that. Neither does that. They're all made up humans. And remember, when you dream in the night, you dream people's faces. Some of who are your friends, so you're actually remembering their faces. Others are just random people. You know how to dream up people's faces. Okay, and we can do that now, for example.
还有第二个就是说，这个通过这种神经网络哈，它可以去分析一个图像里面的这个像素点，知道它的如何分布。比方说这种分布的一个组成，它可能是跟人类的脸更加契合哈，它可以去分析。然后同时的话，它可以再产生一个新的人类。大家看到这些照片哈，全部都不是真人，全部都是这个 AI 合成的哈。所以的话，你大概就可以想想，我们在做梦的时候，对吧？有时候会梦到自己的熟人，有时候会梦到的一些脸的话，是从来都没有见过，就像这种是 AI 合成的。
So you can actually also do things like this. So if I give, in high schools, you might have to write an essay. You give a prompt and you generate an essay. Okay. So you can have machines take a prompt such as recycling is good for the world and write a long essay that has never been written. Okay. And it's a completely new essay, and you can do that.
还有就是 AI 可以帮你写作文哈，大家记得我们高中时候写作文自己都是绞尽脑汁要写。现在的话，你给 AI 一个主题，比方说是关于垃圾怎么资源再循环的，它马上就给你写出来一个，完全是原创的 AI 原创。
And many of you are not impressed, but this kid is happy because he doesn't have to ever write essays.
看这小孩看你多开心啊！到头啊！
And of course, there is also stuff like much of these other things for perception, basically just looking at the world and generating text and so on and so forth. This is sort of a little more interesting. This is, of course, a game that you guys know. I have no clue. Go, a game of Go. And as you know, after chess, for the longest time, Go was still not solved by computers. But as of last 2 years, that's also over. Okay, so AlphaGo basically defeated Lee Sedol, and that was the end of the thing. So, but again, this sort of same perception being connected with reasoning was able to do something that we thought would not be possible anytime soon.
刚才讲了3个例子的话，其实都是 AI 的这种感知的智能，它感知这个世界哈，然后识别哈，去生成一些新的东西。那么最后这个例子的话呢，就是下围棋哈，围棋。很多年前的话 ，AI 就可以下过了象棋的这个棋王，但是的话呢，它一直都没有破解围棋，因为围棋太复杂了。但是现在的话呢，通过把 AI 感知的能力再加上它的推理能力结合在一起的话呢，前几年哈，AlphaGo 已经打败了这个李世石哈。
So the question is, are we done? Because we seem to be doing something very impressive, and is this all intelligence is? Are we done? And the fact that some of these interesting things are possible have led to a lot of hype, both in research and in industry. In research, so this is actually a picture of Archimedes, who said that if you give me a large enough lever and a fulcrum, I can lift the universe. He was drunk. In addition to being naked, he was also drunk. If you know Archimedes' story. And AI currently is going through a phase of, if you give me a big enough GPU, graphics processing unit, a large enough data set, and a deep enough neural network, I'll create you super intelligence. That's where we are currently.
所以说，既然 AI 可以做这么多很厉害的事情的话，那么人不就惨了吗？会不会被取代哈？所以这个地方这张图的话，大家都应该记得哈。这个阿基米比如说给我一个杠杆，一个支点，我就可以撬动地球啊。当然他在说这个话的时候，他是又醉了，然后又没穿衣服哈，所以醉醺醺的说这句话。然后，但是呢，换在 AI 这个世界里，我们可以换一种说法，就是说你给我足够的 GPU， 你给我足够大的这个数据组，一个足够深的这个网络的话呢，我就能够帮你创造出超级智能。
And then on the industry side, you would notice that everybody has to talk about AI. This is a little curve that shows the number of companies that were mentioning AI in their earnings reports in the quarter starting first quarter of 2008. And you notice that by the time you came to 2016, it's already exponentially blowing up. Right now, if you do not mention AI, you may as well fold the company up. Every company must use AI. Go ahead.
所以这个 AI 的话呢，它不仅在研究领域，还在业界的话呢，就引起了很多的这个热潮哈。你看，在08年的，从这张图的话，就是说，在08年第一季度一直到2016年第4季度，这些在这个他们的这个收入报告中提到了 AI 的公司，你可以看到它是以非常倾斜的角度往上涨的。到了今天的话，哪个公司不跟 AI 扯点关系的话呢，好像这个 AI 这个公司就是不行了哈。
But it's not that hard, it turns out, to start AI in your company because, as this statistic shows, about 40% of the AI startups in Europe, I don't know how many in China, do not use any AI, like at all. And yet they are called AI startups.
我不知道哈，就是在欧盟有一个数据显示，它40%标榜自己是 AI 的初创公司的，它其实用到了 AI 为0啊，所以这个热潮是这样的。
So after this, you can go back to your companies and say, we too are doing AI.
所以既然有这样的一个前辈在这里了，大家都可以回到自己公司说，哎，我们公司也在做 AI 啊。
Okay, so that's the first part that I got through, what just happened, which is about the perception and manipulation. In fact, I didn't even show that much about manipulation part because robots are still very bad. The robots can't do what that little girl was able to do earlier on. But we can do perception well. And what I want to do now is, are we done? And what else is left to get to something like human level intelligence?
还有就是，我就把第一部分讲完了哈，就是这个电脑，这个机器现在已经有非常厉害的感知的能力，但是操控能力还不行。大家都知道，现在机器手也没有人那么灵活。那么第二部分我就是想，就是我们人类是不是就已经就是要被取代了呢？哈，我们怎么样？什么时候机器会达到像人一样的智能水平
So these are some of the known thresholds. One that I'll talk to you a little bit more in a minute is combining tacit and explicit knowledge. I mentioned about tacit knowledge. Some things have tacit knowledge, some things have explicit knowledge. We are able to combine them in our day-to-day lives, and getting that is a big threshold.
那么从让机器能够达到这个人类水平的智能的话，其实有很多的关要过哈，一关一关。其中的一关的话，就是我刚才讲的，人的话，我们可以很自然的把我们的隐性知识和这个显性知识的话呢，这个结合在一起。但电脑的话，机器的话呢，不一定做到哈。
And then there are a bunch of other ones, some of which are more technical, like incompleteness and ability to learn from few examples. So even though computers can learn to recognize cats, they need million cat pictures to recognize cats. And we don't need million cat pictures to recognize cats, right? So this idea of being able to learn from just a few examples is something that's very hard to do still.
还有其中的一个关的话呢，就是说它怎么样从比较少的这个样本中就学习啊这个能力哈。比方说我们人看几张猫的照片，然后我们再看猫的时候知道，哎，这个就是猫了。但是电脑的话呢，现在可能要看很多张这个猫的照片才能够学会哈。为了它怎么样用有限的样品来学会的话呢，这也是它要过的一关。
And then the other thing that I want to talk a little bit about, depending on the time, is AI systems interacting with us And that turns out to produce extra problems.
还有的最后一关也是我的研究的主要的方向，就是说这个机器怎么样和人协作以及互动哈。一旦跟人进行协作的时候的话，它就会带来一些新的挑战、新的问题。
But before I leave this slide, I want to mention one big threshold that everybody talks about, and you can use this if you want to tell somebody what AI can't do. Common sense. AI systems do not have common sense. There are large amount of examples for that. I will give you one specific example, okay, and then hopefully she will translate it, and this will be like a pop quiz. It turns out that explorer Magellan went around the world 3 times. One of those trips, Magellan died. The question is, which trip did he die in?
还有一个关口，就是在讲瞎之前的话要过的一关，就是大家也都是知道机器没有就是这个常识哈。然后的话，我想给大家举个例子哈，比方我问你一个问题，比方说麦哲伦，他就是那个航海家、探险家麦哲伦，他的话呢一共出去世界探索了3次，但是在其中的一次这个探索之中他就死掉了，你觉得是哪一次他死掉了？
If you are not laughing at this, then you are a robot.
你没有笑的话，就说明你其实是个机器人啊。那这个问题比较没笑，应该是机器人。
This is the kind of thing that we take for granted that machines do not have.
这种问题的话，我们都不会问的，对吧？哈，这个是我们觉得都知道，肯定是最后一次嘛。但是这个机器会问这样的问题。
So the interesting thing is we never get a job for having common sense, but we lose one for not having common sense.
就是说我们不会因为我们有常识就得到一份工作哈，但是我们人如果没有常识的话，那么肯定就没有工作了。
Because everybody has supposedly common sense and the machines still don't. And so that's one thing that we keep in mind. So what I wanted to mention now is a couple of things, I don't know how much we can get through this, about the fact that we still have this problem of combining tacit and explicit knowledge. Okay, and in particular, the stuff that is working right now tends to have a huge number of problems. And I want to give you some examples. So when it actually recognizes a cat, you are impressed, but many a time it misrecognizes things completely.
这样的话呢，就是机器在这个把这个显性知识和隐性知识这个平衡使用方面，它做的还是不好。比方说，它有时候可以识别到这样图片是只猫，那有时候的话呢，就识别不出来或者识别错了哈。
So this is a technical point, but I'll see at least this picture. Maybe you can explain them. Suppose you have these green points, and you're trying to figure out what function connects these green points. You can think of this line, but you can also think of this crazy curve. Both of them go through the green points. Okay, but this one obviously is sort of considered overfitting in the sense it's doing a lot more than what the data is telling it, whereas this thing is sticking close to the data. Something like this could be happening for the current neural networks.
这张图的话呢，有点技术性哈，大概就是你看在这个象限里面，不是有点绿色的点吗？那点与点之间的话，我们就可能想是通过什么样的它们之间的函数关系是怎么样哈？那么最有效率就是大概一条直线，就是贯穿所有这些绿点。但是的话，机器有时候啊，它可能就会绕路，它就只走这个黄色的这样一条曲曲折折的线。虽然它都经过了每一个绿点，但是它有一点过拟合了，就是它做的比它应该做的就更多，就是它很没有效率哈，这就是一个神经网络可能会出现的一个现象。
Okay, so some examples of that is here you have a school bus and a puppy. I added some noise to this school bus. This is noise. So I just basically changed some pixel values a little bit. After I added this, I didn't add this directly, I took a small portion of it and added to this, and I got this picture. And then similarly, I added this noise, and I got this picture.
给大家举个例子哈，比方说 这2张图啊，它都是这个巴士还有只狗狗。然后的话呢，我在中间的话是噪音啊，就把它一点就是噪音的话呢，加入到了这个原来的图片中，它就变成了我们现在人类看到也是同样的这个车，同样的狗，但是这个在这个机器看来的话，它就不同了，因为它加了一些噪音进去。
So despite you hopefully are thinking these are school buses and this is still a school bus and this is still a puppy, but most current state-of-the-art systems will say this is an ostrich, this is also an ostrich.
我们看到是一样的，但是机器的话，现在的机器看到就会说，哎，都变成上面那个是鸵鸟，下面那个也是变成了鸵鸟。
So you're impressed when your little machine said, oh, this is a school bus, but you're completely flummoxed when it said, this is an ostrich. And similarly, you are happy that your machine said, this is a puppy, but you're flummoxed as to why this is an ostrich.
对啊，有时候机器会告诉你，哎，这个第一张图是一个巴士，你就觉得，哎，你这个识别出来了，结果加点噪点，它就变成了一个鸵鸟，就搞不清楚它为什么会得出这样的一个结果。明明看起来就是巴士，还为什么机器会识别出这样的结果
So it is possible. So where are these ostriches coming from? It's possible that the world is full of ostriches that you just didn't notice.
有很多种可能哈。第一个就是说，其实这个世界上都是鸵鸟，我们只是人眼没有。
They're just all over the place, right? Let's also not forget the fact that we don't see the world very well either. Here is a picture. There's a story behind this picture. In Norway, which just happens to be our favorite immigrant country, some right-wing nuts posted this picture and said, Norway is being taken over by burqa-clad Muslim women, and we must stop this by maybe building a fjord or something.
还有的话，其实我们人眼啊，我们也识别东西可能也会出错的。这张图片的话，就是挪威哈，挪威有很多的移民的一个国家，它突然间就有这样出了一张照片，然后就有一个傻蛋哈在那里说，现在我们挪威已经被这种戴着这种面纱的穆斯林妇女所占领了，他占领了我们挪威，占领了我们挪威的巴士。
So you may laugh at those people who thought these thoughts about, anti-Muslim sentiment and so on, but you look at this picture, you can kind of understand why they got confused. Because at some angle, these city bus seats do kind of look like women who are burqa clad.
你可能看到这个图就觉得这个人就是傻蛋哈，这个就是反穆斯林情绪的。但是你有时候看看，你在某一个角度看这个巴士座椅的照片，看起来的确是戴着头巾的穆斯林妇女啊。
Okay. Now that I told you this, do you now see that there is an ostrich here?
所以你看了这张图，你有这样的感受，那你可不可以就是感同身受？机器有时候也会识别错的嘛，对吧？
I hope you don't.
我希望你们不会感同身受，它不应该这样。
So the point is, the failure modes of the AI technology are very worrisome. We don't understand how they fail. When they succeed, we are happy. When they fail, we don't. Human vision, when they fail, we have some sense as to why it failed. But here you have no idea why this is considered an ostrich.
看到这张图的话，我们也知道有时候为什么有人会看错哈，我们人知道为什么我们人会看错了，但是在机器出现这种识别错误的时候的话呢，这个就很让人担忧了，因为我们不知道是什么造成了它的识别错误啊。
It turns out that the way of thinking about this is really this picture that I showed you earlier. It turns out these networks have so many parameters. These big neural networks have so many parameters. They actually have more tunable parameters than data. So for example, a system which produced that essay has 1.5 billion tunable weights. 1.5 billion tunable weights that have to be little changed.
那么这是为什么呢？它其实就是一个刚才把这个技术性的图给放出来，就是这样的一个原因，就是因为在这个网络里面它里面的这个参数 可调整的参数比这个数据量还要大。刚才我们不是说 AI 写作文吗？写作文的那个网络，这个神经网络系统，它里面可调整的这个加权，它叫加权哈，它大概有15亿个那么多，15亿的那么多。
So with those many degrees of freedom, the machine might agree with you in some cases, while disagreeing wildly with you in many, many, many other cases.
所以这么多的可调节这种参数啊，还有这个加权值哈，所以的话就让我们有时候机器可以识别出来我们人看到的东西，有些时候它的一个结果就不是跟我们人类的话呢看到的是不一样的。
So these can be used to attack your machines, which think they are looking at the world. And here is another example where there are completely different set of pictures here, and yet all of them are seen to be the same exact pictures, starting from first rank bullfrog to 1000th rank tiger shark. So these pictures that you don't think have anything in common, the state-of-the-art networks, they think they're all the same.
对，然后还有这些图片，我们人看起来都知道是不一样的东西，但在机器看来的话，它都是同样的东西。就是它有一个机器的话，它就是排名嘛，排序嘛。它第一个排序都是这个牛蛙，最后一个排序的话都是这个虎鲨哈。在他们看来，它这些图片的这些给机器看来都是一模一样的。想想这个的话，其实挺可怕的吧？其他人可以利用这种机器的这样的一种给它加点东西的话，就可以来就是黑到我们的系统里面去，让我们造成一些后果、一些事故。
So this is all very new work. It's actually being presented as we speak. Right now, there is a conference going on in New Orleans, and these people are presenting this work, showing that the current AI systems have these kinds of limitations.
所以这也是在2019年，就是正在这段时间，刚刚在新奥尔良开了一个 AI 的大会哈，其中的一个讲者的话呢，就给大家看了这个，就是说，其实现在在我们的 AI 的这个网络里面呢，就是 AI 里面还有很多的这个限制。
And this was actually from Tencent, I believe. Tencent folks showed that Tesla car, which also has this AI technology built in to look at the images, can be misled into going into the oncoming traffic. That's not fun. It's one thing seeing ostriches, other thing seeing cars on your other car.
还有一个比较可怕的例子，这是来自腾讯的一个例子啊，他们就研究说，其实特斯拉不是有这个自动开车的那个功能吗？哈，它其实可以通过一些标语上的，就是这个街道上一些标示的改变哈，让特斯拉的话不按自己的道走到反方向车道上面去啊。
This is a fun video. It basically shows, and this is actually very useful wherever there is surveillance, which is there in many cities, especially in China. If you don't want your government to see you, you can get one of these patches, and the patch makes you disappear.
然后这个是比较好玩的例子，现在很多有 CCTV 嘛 ，AI 捕捉你的头像啊、这个身形什么的。但如果你不想被 AI 识别出来的话，你可以中间的话放上这样一个图，那么对于这个 AI 来说，你就隐身了啊。
So whenever that guy is holding that, when he removes it, he's seen as a person.
他拿下来之后 ，AI 就可以识别出来他了。
But he puts it back, the computer doesn't see him.
贴上之后 ，AI 就识别不出来他了。
Okay? And then it can do all sorts of fun things. So when he's holding it, it sees the chair, but not him.
它可以识别后面的椅子，但识别不出来他啊。
And if he puts it on him, that guy disappears.
给他那旁边那个人也变隐形了。
So the point I'm trying to get across to you is both that we have very impressive technology right now, and that it has many problems.
所以所有这些例子都想让大家知道哈，现在 AI 的技术是非常非常厉害，可以做到很多的事情。但是的话呢，它有很多的这些局限，它有很多是做不到的。
This is one more of the works that these guys, Thais et al. Did. It just came up last week, essentially. So it's like.
而这个例子也是最新的哈，上周的话才发表出来。
So in the beginning, people used to think that these sort of issues are just a minor problem. Jeff Hinton, who just got like a major award, the Nobel Prize of Computer Science, called Turing Award, used to think this was not a big deal, but now he too believes that it's a much bigger deal to actually being able to do this kind of adversarial examples. And so the visual systems are not robust.
所以的话呢，这种刚才我们说的这种识别错误的话呢，在这个 AI 中叫对抗样本所以这个之前写这句话的这个人的话呢 Geoffrey Hinton， 他是刚刚以 AI 得了这个图灵奖的一个科学家，他之前就说这种对抗样本其实不是什么很大的问题，但是到了现在，他意识到这将是对人来说可能是一个非常严重的问题。
So again, this is one more of the busy slides. I'll take a few minutes to explain, and maybe some of this will get through. This is this idea called data versus doctrine. So if you only have data and you don't know how the task is supposed to be done, you have to use learning. But many tasks, you know actually how it is supposed to be done, because you know how your company is supposed to be run. You don't just give it to some machine right away. And one of the biggest issues is how to combine the data and doctrine, as against just going to convert everything into data and try to learn.
然后这张图的话，其实就是讲这个数据比方说你只有数据的话，但是你不知道这项任务怎么做的话，那你可能就要用这些神经网络让这个机器进行学习。但是的话呢，你要怎么样用这个数据是过度的使用，把所有的数据的话呢，把所有知识都转成数据呢，还是所有数据都转成知识这个数据还有你想要做这个信条 doctrine 之间的话是什么样的关系？
So this guy Polanyi, he was a philosopher, and he used to talk about the fact that we tend not to take tacit knowledge seriously. We only write books about our knowledge, and we can't write books about things for which we don't have explicit theories. And so he was worried that we were not paying enough attention to tacit knowledge. But what's happening right now is a kind of a revenge of Polanyi, where people don't want anything to be explicit. They want just to learn directly from the data.
就是说这张图的这是一个哲学家叫做波拉尼他有提出一个很著名叫波拉尼的这个悖论，他就说我们人类不知道我们所不知道的这个东西但是现在的话呢 AI 好像走到了另外的一个这个极端，就觉得说所有东西我们都不知道，所以的话我们就有数据让机器学就行了。
So one of the things that we are able to do, so for example, if you join a company and they say, here is the rule book that we use, this is the set of rules we use in the company, you are supposed to read that. Instead, you could say, no, don't tell me anything, I'll just watch you for about 10 years and figure out how this company works. And that looks extremely silly thing to do.
举个简单的例子吧，比方你新进一家公司的话，可能会给你看一个公司的守则上面说在这边公司有些什么样的规定，然后你说我不看你反正我就先开始工作，我就开始观察周围的人，我观察10年之后，我就自然知道这个公司到底是怎么样的一个这个规则要求这个就是我们听起来当然特别傻了但是现在就是 AI 走到这样的一个极端
So one of the things that people are able to do, you and I are able to do, is combine tacit knowledge, things that we can't explain, with explicit knowledge, things that we can actually talk about directly. And that's what being human is, and machines need to be able to do that.
所以说的话，我们人我们是把这种显性的事和这种隐性的知识，我们是共同的、平衡的进行使用，这才是我们人做事的方式嘛。所以机器的话也不能一再的说，我不需要什么显性知识，我就通过数据我来学就行了所以机器应该像人一样，能够平衡的使用显性还有隐性的知识
So if you do not do that, if you only depend on the tacit knowledge, then there are no explanations for why the machine did what it did. It will say, this is an ostrich, and you ask, why is it an ostrich? What explanation can it give in that particular picture?
还有 就是你只给机器喂数据，然后让它自己去学习识别的话，然后有些它的这个决策过程就无法解释了，对吧？你说这个把那个巴士识别成了这个鸵鸟，然后你问他说你为什么会识别鸵鸟呢？然后机器它是无法解释它的决策的。
So purely tacit knowledge-based systems will have problems with interpretability, that is us understanding why the machine did what it did.
所以我们必须要知道哈，就是机器和人要协作的话，首先我们要知道这个 AI 的话呢，它这个机器为什么做了这样的一个决策。
And they will also have susceptibility to adversarial attacks, the kinds of things that I show here and that we have seen earlier, where a stop sign might be seen by the machine as a yield sign or something else, or a school bus sign might be seen as an ostrich sign.
还有的话呢，就是说 AI 如果不可以解释的话呢，就可能会造成这种对抗样本的袭击。就是什么意思呢？本来是这个就是刚才车那样的话，你应该走自己的那条道儿，但是它把这个标识稍微加点东西，然后 AI 就是机器一识别的话，觉得这个条道不通，它就转到那个对面对向车道去了。这种叫做对抗样本的袭击，这样的是非常危险的。
And then it also leads to, if you're making decisions based on things that you just learned from large data without knowing a theory behind your classes, you can get into lots of problems such as biased decisions. So here is basically a project that showed that most commercial face recognition systems can't even tell whether a picture is a male or a female if they are not white males.
然后还有就是说 AI 不可以解释它的这个决策过程的话呢，那么它还会造成很多的这个偏见。举个例子吧，这种商业公司做出来的这种脸部识别的这些程序啊，它都看到一个照片，它如果这个照片不是白人男性的话，它就很难分辨他是男的还是女的，就很难分辨性别啊。如果不是白人男性的话。
Okay, so, and then this was actually from China, and this is kind of worrisome. Some people submitted a paper where they looked at police pictures of people who have been jailed and people who haven't yet been jailed because they are considered innocent, and they tried to predict just from your face whether you are a criminal or not. And they got 98% accuracy. Do you want that kind of a system to be used, given the fact that you know that the system can't even tell the difference between a dog and an ostrich, or a school bus and an ostrich?
还有这个是中国的一个例子啊，他们这个应用的话呢，就收集了很多那种罪犯的这种警察的给的那种照片，然后想通过 AI 就分析说，如果有可能是这样的话，进预测哈，某些人可能还没有是罪犯，这些人可能就是这个罪犯，就是预测你是不是罪犯，对吧？而且他说他的准确率达到了98%。你想想，现在这个 AI 的网络能巴士都能错认为是这个鸵鸟，你相信这个网络能够真正的预测出谁是罪犯，谁不是这个罪犯？
So there are other companies such as this Israeli company which says it will look at your face and tell somebody whether you are a terrorist or not. And then some other company says they can look at the face and say whether you are an academic researcher or a poker player or a terrorist.
还有很多其他的这些公司，他们就做 AI， 就是说我看你的这个照片，我就能够去 AI 预测说分析说你是不是可能是恐怖分子，或者是你是不是特别擅长于打扑克这种各种各样的应用。
So in the old days, people will look at your head and try to read your fortune, or look at your hand and read your fortune. Now we look at our faces and read our fortune.
以前的话，我们都是摸骨算命看手相算命。现在的话是 AI 看一眼就可以给你算命了你是不是会当罪犯？
Now, clearly, this is a very useful technology for a professor like me, because I hate grading, right? And so what I've decided is ASU gives me the pictures of all the students that I have ever taught, and I know their grades, so I train a system to predict the grade. And if you were to take my class, I'll just show you a picture to the the program and will tell you what the grade is, and I don't have to grade. Go ahead.
如果我要用的话哈，比方说我是教授嘛，我就喜欢给大家讲课，但我不喜欢这个评改卷子，对吧？然后如果像他们那样用这种 AI 的话，那我就是收集每个学生他们都有一个学生照嘛，对吧？我把过去的这些学生的照片给他们得到的这些分数进行一个匹配，然后我就预测未来这些学生，只要他们给我一张照片的话，我就可以通过识别马上给他们一个分数哈。
The reason I put that up there is this clearly you see is a silly thing to do, right? But you would not think something. If somebody were to tell you that we looked at X-rays and decided what disease you have just by reading the X-rays. Currently, every month we are having news saying AI systems are better than human doctors. These are the same systems that have all these other problems. And you have to be careful in terms of putting full confidence in those decisions.
所以给大家举这个例子的话，你可以看到现在这 AI 的这个 AI 的运用哈，完全就是有点不讲道理的哈。而且现在我们听到很多的新闻，就是说 AI 现在去识别这些 X 光的这些照片呐，它识别的比那个专门的 X 光的医生要识别的更好哈。但你想想，它用的这个神经网络，其实跟我刚才讲的例子的神经网络是一样的哈。所以每次看到这种样的一些新闻的话，其实大家都要留个心眼，要小心一点看。
So, the thing that I want you to remember, I guess this part of the talk, which is really supposed to be 1/3, but I think we more or less will have to stop here given the amount of time we took, is you want AI systems. So there is this thing in Christianity called the serenity prayer. And I made up a serenity prayer for the robots that says, human, grant me the serenity to accept from you things that I can't learn by being told. And the data to learn the things that I can actually learn, and the wisdom to know the difference.
这一页的话呢，就是说在基督教里面哈有这样的一句话，就是说上帝啊，给我平静的内心，让我可以接受哈我改变不了的事情，然后给我勇气，让我可以去改变我可以改变的事情，然后给我智慧，让我可以识别出什么是可以改变的，什么是不可以改变的。那么一样画瓢的话呢，给 AI 也做了这样的一句话，就是说人类啊，给我这个平静的内心，让我接受什么是我是可以学习的啊，给我数据，让我认识到它是人类给我平静的内心，让我接受一些我学不了的东西，好，然后给我数据，让我学习一些我可以学习的东西，并且给我智慧，让我知道什么是可以学习的，什么不可以学习的。
So for the next part, I'm just going to go quickly and show a few things because we are running out of time. Just let them
好，
know.
接下来这部分的话呢，我会省略到一些的这个 PPT 哈，因为大家时间有点不够了。
Okay, so what I'm going to talk a little, and I'm going to get to a point where you get to translate, that way we'll be faster. I'm going to talk a little about interaction, and what I want you to get across is this, that most of the AI systems until now never really worked with humans. We tend to take pleasure in either defeating humans in various games or being on Mars. We're very far away from the humans, so you don't have to deal with them. Working with humans has not really been something that AI has been good at.
然后其实想到现在我们 AI 的很多的系统哈，大家可以看到，它其实的话呢，没有不跟人协作的话呢，它其实就是运作的，就是它特别，就是它可能不愿意跟人一起协作，都是自己在那里运作的。比方说，要么就是这种打败人的这种阿法狗啊，它要么打败人类，要么的话呢，像火星上那种漫游车一样哈，周围完全没有人，它一个人在火星上跑来跑去，还做得特别好。所以的话呢，但是现在我们怎么样让机器和人去进行协作
And to work with humans, machines need, in addition to perception and cognitive intelligence, they need emotional intelligence and social intelligence.
所以跟人类去进行协作的这个机器的话呢，它需要有这个情商哈，了解人的情感，它同时要有这个社交和这个沟通的这种智能。
And in fact, working with humans requires us, for the AI systems, to understand what is happening in the humans' heads.
还有就是说的话呢 ，AI 啊，它要跟人类合作，它必须要知道人类是怎么想的，它得会设身处地替人类想，大概是这个意思。
So the ability to model other people's mental states is very uniquely human. That's how we get to tell stories, we get to tell lies to each other, and we also cooperate with each other. And it's something that kids get only later in life. In the beginning, kids don't know how to tell lies. And then when they turn about 3 or 4, they realize that what they know about the world is different from what their parents know. That's when they can tell lies. And so I was very happy when my son was able to tell the first lie because I knew he has a brain.
对，然后如果机器要跟人类去合作的话呢，就是它必须要设身处地为人着想嘛。你想想，设身处地为他人着想的话，知道其他人在想什么，这是我们人类特有的这种能力哈。有了这种能力的话，我们才能跟人类去跟其他人去协作。然后，比方你看看这个小孩子，他从小的时候他是不会说谎的，但是他长到了3到4岁的时候，他开始可能在某些情况下他会说谎的。因为他知道他看到的世界可能跟他爸妈看到的世界是不一样的，所以他为了可能他爸妈不高兴，他就会说谎啊。所以当我知道我的儿子听到我儿子说的第一个谎的时候，其实我内心还挺开心的，在某个程度上，因为我知道我的小孩有脑子啊。
So as AI technology becomes more commonplace, it needs to work with humans. And for example, there are things like intelligent tutoring systems where AI systems teach kids. That's a very important application. There is social robotics also, but any application where an AI system has to work with the human in the loop winds up requiring this ability to interact with humans.
其实的话呢，这种协作的这种 AI 的话，会有很多很多的应用。比方说，以后 AI 的话呢，作为你个人的这种智能的小孩的智能的辅导老师啊，还有这种社交的机器人呐、帮助人类做很多很多的事情哈。那这种机器人就要求你必须要了解人类的这样一个思维模式是什么样的。
So this and the next slide are a couple of things that we do in my lab about getting humans and AI systems to work together. And what's happening in these cases is using, this guy is wearing a sort of a brain-computer interface. It's like a emotive interface. And that can allow the machine to get a little idea about the brainwave patterns. And that is enough, for example, for him to kind of say, without saying anything, that I want that particular block not to be touched. And the machine gets it. And similarly, one other thing is that the machine also can project what it is trying to do into things like HoloLens that people can wear.
这就是我们实验室在做的这个协作机器人哈。这个的话，你看那个人的话，他带着一个这种头戴的设备，它可以传达一些简单的这个脑电波哈，一些脑电波是代表他的情绪的，所以他根本不用说什么话，这个机器就大概知道说，还有他前面这个红色的那个块啊，是他自己想留着的，机器不要用。结果机器的话就理解了哈，所以他就没有碰，所以这个算成功了。还有一个的话呢，就是让机器去预测人类想要做什么啊，就是研究了2个方向。
So the other thing that machines need to do when they're working with us is to have a sense of what we expect them to do. And if they're doing something that's different from what we are expecting them to do, we will be surprised and there would be a problem in interaction. And so the systems have to either provide explicable behavior, that is, do things that people expect you to do, and if you can't, provide an explanation. The reason I can't do what you're expecting me to do is because of the following reasons. Okay.
还有第2点很重要的这个协作机器人，就是说他得知道人类想他做什么，对吧？如果他做的事情不是人类所期待的话，那人类可能就会吃惊，然后这是不利于就是人机就是一个协作机器人的。所以呢，我们现在在研究的话，是让这个机器人知道人类对它的期待是什么，然后它可以选 去做，或者是他觉得这个成本过高了，他可能就会选择另外一条路，但是他去跟人类解释说为什么我选择第二条路。
So a longer talk on some of those challenges I gave in New Orleans last year as the president of AAAI on challenges of human AI systems. That if any of this is interesting to you, you can find it on the YouTube.
关于这些的话呢，我在去年我们的那个人工智能美国这个协会18年大会上面的话呢，我有专门讲了很详细的内容，在网上有，如果大家有兴趣的话呢，可以看一下。
So next, I'm going to quickly skip several slides and get to the last 3 slides.
那现在我再跳过几页的话。
Okay. So the slides that I want to show is that I kind of tried to tell you what AI is able to do, but also tried to give some cautionary notes on what it is not able to do. I don't want you to think that I'm some sort of a hater of AI. I've spent my entire career trying to do AI. In fact, AI technology is going to have profoundly positive impacts on our lives. It's going to improve quality of life. It's going to improve universal access. Machines can do lip reading, and that way people can essentially understand, even if they are deaf, for example. And they can do a lot of things that can help the society. And then, of course, machines can help improve our own intelligence in terms of augmenting the intelligence.
其实的话呢，刚才给大家讲了，现在 AI 能做到什么程度，或者是 AI 做不到什么的哈，然后让大家就是小心。但是并不是说呢，我不喜欢 AI 或者觉得 AI 不好，因为你看我一辈子都是在研究 AI 的。其实我觉得 AI 可以给我们的人类社会带来很多的好处。首先，第一个提高我们的生活质量；二来的话呢，给很多的这种比方说听不见或说不出的人，他可以通过 AI 做更多的事情。第三个的话呢，就是整个对社会来说的话呢，是有利于社会的福祉的。最后一个的话呢，就是说我们人类的智能再加上 AI 的智能的话，其实可以让我们的能力更增强，这就我们叫做什么扩充智能。
So AI, all technologies are dual-use technologies. They can be used for good as well as for bad. Okay, and AI is about intelligence, which is like the most essential aspect of humanity. And so it can be used for many good things, but it can also be used for many bad things.
我们都知道技术的话呢是这个双面刃一个双面剑。那么 AI 的话呢，它其实就是跟我们人类最根本的这个东西，就是人类的智能就是在仿造，它是非常类似的。所以的话呢，它也非常非常的重要。所以 AI 的话，它既能够带来好的，也能够带来坏的。
So we need to be careful in terms of how the technology is being used in our day-to-day lives.
这说明我们在用 AI 把它应用到每天的生活中的时候的话，其实我们要特别的小心，特别的谨慎。
So already there's been a statement that perception is reality, and if machines can do perception, then machines can generate fake reality.
我们都说嘛，感知即现实，对吧？那既然现在 AI 有了感知的能力，那么它其实就能够生成所谓的现实，但是这个是假的现实，对吧？
Here are two pictures. I don't know, some of you, I don't know any of you have seen this. One of them is fake. Can you tell which one is fake? That means the person doesn't exist.
这两张图有一张是 AI 生成的就是完全就是编造的生成的，你觉得是哪一张？
How many people think
有多少人
This one?
选这张的？
this one?
有多少人是选那个男的的？
How many people think this
有
one?
多少人选那个小女孩的？
How many people think both are real?
有哪些人选两个？
Because I already said that. So you can actually go to this page called whichfaceisreal.com, and then it will give you two pictures at a time, and you can try to guess who is real.
你可以上这个 whichfaceisreal.com 它上面有很多这样的图片，然后给你选哪个是真的，哪个是合成的。
So in this case, this is the real one.
这个小女孩是真的，小女孩是真的
Now we can kind of tell how to, the reason I know, for example, is we know the limitations of the technology. There are certain things that the technology does damn wrong, and so you can tell which is the fake.
就是像我研究 AI 嘛，我就知道这个技术有哪些局限性所以它在生成图像上面的话呢，有哪些地方可以看，就可以看出它是合成的。
But this is a moving target. As the technology improves, you will come to a point where you can't believe your eyes.
就是说，但是这个技术它在不断的演变所以你就是攻下了一城，它又变得更厉害了。就是永远的话，它到后来的话，可能会让你完全吃惊的，完全看不出来它们之间的区别。
So this leads to huge dating worries. I assume Tantan is one of the Tinder equivalents in China. So you may well be trying to date somebody who doesn't actually exist.
然后的话呢，这你可以想象这有很多的影响 看它好像是印度的一个这个像婚恋网站上，大家在上面找男朋友女朋友的。
These are issues that are actually problems already right now. And similarly, if a machine were to write an essay instead of this kid, sometimes we can tell, sometimes we can't.
就是说婚恋网站上，如果那个人不是真人怎么样哈，就是变 AI 合成的。还有这个写作文的话，它有时候 AI 生成，有时候我们可以看出来是 AI 写的，有些时候我们是看不出来的。
And you guys know this guy.
大家看过这个吗？
Because this is a fake anchor who basically tells the real news.
这是
We
一个
have real anchors telling the fake news apparently. Go ahead.
对 ，He's telling the fake news。
No, he's the fake guy. This is not a real person.
他是报新闻的，然后这个主播当然完全是 AI 合成的，没有这个真人啊，每天都在网上报新闻。
So this guy is the world's first AI news anchor, and he was already up in like November of 2018.
他是18年11月9号就开始上线了哈，是全球第一个 AI 合成的这个广播员哈。
So the other thing that you could think of, we won't have too much time to talk about right now, is these technologies can cause unemployment. If many things that humans can do, machines can do, then the question is, what's going to happen to the jobs?
还有就是说，大家都担心哈 ，AI 以后能做的越来越多了，会不会造成很大面积的失业呢？取代我的工作呢？
And the reason, so the thing that I want you to remember is this little picture and this one statement that doctors might be easier to replace than nurses.
然后我想对这个问题的解决的话呢，解决答案哈，就给大家看这张图，还有一句话大家应该记住，就是说医生跟护士相比的话，未来更可能是医生被 AI 取代，而不是护士。
So this particular picture here shows things that are routine jobs and things that are non-routine. That means they need some creativity. And here it says things that require cognitive intelligence and things that only require hand intelligence.
为什么给大家看这张图呢？它这个4个象限，然后横的话呢，那边是这个重复的工作，就是单调重复的工作；那边的话呢，就是说很多变化的工作。竖轴的话呢，上面是需要用认知能力来做的，下面的话呢是体力劳动哈，形成了4个象限。
The thing to remember is not white collar versus blue collar, but routine versus non-routine. All routine jobs are easy to automate.
所以现在不是说蓝领的被取代，而是白领的被取代。在 AI 看来的话，它会取代的是那些一成不变的工作，需要不断的可以重复的、可以标准化的、可以自动化的那个部分工作。
For example, radiologists get paid a lot to read X-rays, but right now that job is very much likely to go away in numbers. Similarly, paralegals as a profession who tend to read case law and try to take summaries, that's going away.
举个例子吧，比方看 X 光上照片的那些医生哈，他们的工资非常的高，但是未来的话，他们的工作也很有可能被 AI 取代。还有那些法务助理，他们都是读各种各样的卷宗啊，这种证词啊，这种重复性的工作，未来也很可能被 AI 所取代。
So make sure that you don't make your kids to grow up to do routine things, even if they are paying well right now.
所以说给小孩子选这个职业的时候，就不要想着说，现在这个工作工资有多高，要看他未来他的这个工作内容是不是重复性的哈。
And if your boss ever tells you, wow, you're like a machine, be very afraid.
如果你跟你的上司跟你说，天哪，你就像个机器人一样，那你得小心，但要小心了，你的饭碗可能不保。
You won't have a job.
来，你说机器真的把你给取代。
So in terms of bias, we need to think about how the data brings bias into consideration rather than anybody sitting there and trying to introduce racism or sexism. If a machine learns from the data that it's given, it learns the patterns from that. This is the reason why machines are good at finding white males, because most of the pictures tend to be white male pictures.
还 而且未来的话，我们最需要担心的这些偏见的话呢，是在数据上喂给机器的那些片面的有偏见的数据，而不是那些一直鼓吹什么这个种族至上那些人哈，这种偏见的不是数据啊。这是为什么刚才讲当时的那样的一个图片识别的话，不能够识别除了白人男性之外的其他人的性别，就是因为喂给这些机器去培训的数据全部都是白人男性的这些数据样本。
So it's important to make sure that the data that the system is trained on is representative, which is a very hard thing to do. And so people tend to say the companies are sexist. So an example that I want you to think of, remember, is Samsung, which is a camera company, at one point of time came up with this blink detection feature. So that if you take a picture and your friends blink, then they don't come well. And they found that the camera will keep saying blinking, blinking, blinking whenever people from China, Korea, Japan are in the picture. Now, this is very easy to say, my God, Samsung is being racist. But Samsung is a South Korean company. They know how people's eyes look. But they used easily available data, which happens to be white male data. And so they wound up thinking that by white male eye size, these other guys look like they're blinking. And this is the kind of thing you want to keep in mind. Please go ahead.
所以就是不要数据的这个这么带来的偏见性的话，就是我们要给这个机器喂有各种代表性的这个数据，数据的样本要比较平衡和平均。举个例子吧，比方三星的话，它是有一个照相机有一个功能的话，就是识别你有没有眨眼哈，它可以识别眨眼。但是的话呢，三星它是韩国公司，但是它在拍比方中国人、韩国人、日本人时候的话，它老是识别到那个就是在拍的人是在眨眼的。为什么会这样子呢？因为它用了最就手的数据，最就手的数据什么都是白人的数据。那白人的眼睛大小和我们黄人是不一样，的。所以的话，那个就是它那个估算出来，就是只要是黄人在拍的话，全部都是识别到他们在眨眼睛啊。所以就是数据的一个平衡的一个重要性。
As humans, we already have biases. Different ones of us have different biases. By having AI systems, these biases can be essentially magnified because a single system is having one particular set of biases. That's a worrisome thing, but it could also make us be aware of our own biases. There's a beautiful statement by Martin Luther King, who decided to put civil rights on the TVs, saying that let me put what's going on the streets into people's living rooms, and if they're happy with it, the society won't change. But if they didn't realize it, and they realize it now because it's on the TV, then the society will change. And that's what happened. And so knowing that we have certain inbuilt biases might actually help. And so to that extent, AI can bring a mirror to us.
还有就是我们人呐，生来我们都是有偏见的。那这个偏见如果放到了 AI 里面的话，它可能会就是进一步的被放大哈，这是很令人担心的。但是反面上来说的话 ，AI 就像一面镜子一样，可以让我们认识到我们人自己的偏见。以前马丁路德金的时候，他就有就是很著名的说过一句话，就是说我要让这关于民权这个意识啊，就是进入这个千家万户，就是通过这个电视广播进入到千家万户。以前是对民权的这个要求，我们都上街游行嘛哈，不是所有人都能看到，但是进入了电视机之后的话呢，人人都可以看到。那大家看到了，意识到有这样的一个问题了，那他们可能就会开始有这样的意识，整个社会就会相应的改变。同时 AI 也是这样子的哈，如果它帮助我们意识到了我们的偏见的话，那其实能够帮助我们消除一些不必要的偏见。
So even the kind of thing that I was talking about, AI systems getting along with humans, opens up new ways in which AI systems can get us into trouble. Basically, once I model your mental state, I can tell you lies. So the AI systems can tell you lies. And do you want that to happen? This is another issue that we will be worried about. And in fact, we basically wrote a paper on whether AI systems should lie to you. Sometimes your loved ones tell you white lies just to get you to do good things. Do you want the AI systems to do that? These are kinds of things that we have to start worrying about.
还有就是说 AI 的话，它越来越了解人类这个思维模式的话，它可能跟人类一样学会去这个撒谎了哈。所以问题就是说，我们希不希望人类希不希望 AI 撒谎？还有专门的一个学术论文，就是说我们希不希望，就是关于这个话题的，就是说，比方说你有时候你可能愿意跟你的太太说一一个善意的谎言，那让大家的关系更好。那么 AI 的话呢，我们愿意他说一个善意的谎言，但是结果是好的。这个是存在很多的这样的争论在里面。
Okay, so that sort of a thing can also happen. We should be careful about it. There are things that the worldwide AI community, including in China, is doing to worry about these kinds of things. We had, for example, a workshop here about in ASU about how to deal with the worrisome aspects of AI technology. Also, there is a conference that I started when I was a AAI president on AI ethics and society. And finally, there is a partnership for AI which looks into impacts of AI technology on the society, on which I was a board member.
所以关于这个 AI 对人类社会的影响或者带来的风险的话呢，整个 AI 的国际社群的话呢，都是在担心并且在进行积极的讨论的。比方我们 ASU 的话呢，就有一个专门关于这个风险的这个 AI 带来风险的一个工作坊。那么我以前做这个美国这个 AI 这个协会的主席的时候，我们还开了这个大会，还有一个专门的讲题，就是 AI 和 AI 的风险对社会的影响。包括我的话呢，也是一个叫做 AI 合作伙伴 AI Partnership 的一个董事会的一个成员哈。那么我们的开的这个议题的话，也是关于 AI 对于社会的影响。
So even if you haven't heard about AI before, you already heard in the news that there are all these kinds of worries about AI technology and societal impacts. I hope you got some idea about what are the problems and who are trying to work on this.
然后大家可能对 AI 的就是不是那么深入的了解，但你肯定在报章杂志上面看到了哈，这个 AI 可以做什么，然后大家对 AI 可能的一些潜在的影响这个担心。那么这个的话也让大家了解一下哈，现在我们正在怎么做。
So I will conclude now. Basically, this is the summary that I hope you will get from this. The points that I want you to get, and I'll see one point at a time, hopefully. That first point is having made most progress on tasks for which people have explicit knowledge. AI systems now started doing progress on tasks for which we only have tacit knowledge, so we can't tell the machine what to do.
所以最后总结一下哈，第一点就是说，以前的话呢 ，AI 在这种可编程的这种显性知识方面呢，取得了非常长足的进展。那么现在的话呢，我们也开始在 AI 怎么样让 AI 通过学习一种隐性的这种知识的话呢，来做一些任务，那么来开始发展这一方面。
This has had many interesting ramifications both within the field and outside the field. Outside the field in terms of the hype, within the field in terms of only looking for one particular type of technology for solving all problems.
还有，所以这个的话呢，这样一种情况哈，对我们圈内或者圈外来说都有很大的影响。圈外来说，就是在社会上形成了这种热潮哈，人人追 AI。那对圈内来讲的话呢，就是有一些研究者的过度的，就是说所有就是要 AI 都是要通过数据来学习，走到了其中的一个极端。
What we have is narrow superintelligence at this point of time. There are systems that can tell apart 200 different varieties of dogs. Nobody with a life actually should do that because that's like too crazy. What we don't yet have is general intelligence, and we are still far from general intelligence, and significant thresholds remain to be crossed, including some of the things I explained, such as common sense and the machines working with humans.
还有的话，现在 AI 的话呢，在某一个很窄的领域的话呢，是达到了超级智能哈，比我们人类做到的要多很多。比方说，它可以一下子识别200种或者2000种不同的狗的种类哈。其实人的话并没有要求需要这样的能力，但是的话呢 ，AI 在一般性的智能上面的话呢，还差得很远哈，而且它还是有很多重要的关卡需要过的。
So AI remains both a big tool that we can use to solve lots of problems as well as a weapon that you can use against other people at this point of time. And the new AI technologies open up new ways of attacking people, including making up new fake reality in general. So we are coming close to a time when we can't tell what we are seeing is the video of your friend or it's a completely made up video.
第三点的话呢，就是 AI 的话，它是一个双面剑，它既可以当工具，也可以当武器。那么随着 AI 现在感知的这个智能的蓬勃的发展的话呢，它有在武器这一方面的话呢，它有一些新的方式能够来去威胁人的这种生命财产健康的。以前的话呢，我们都说眼见为实，但是因为现在 AI 的话可以生成各种各样的所谓的现实哈，但它是虚假的现实，所以我们不能再说眼见为实了。
So, at least for now, for people like us, we still need techniques to kind of tell what is real versus what is not real. And so, in fact, a startup that I'm involved in has this tool called Reality Defender, which is essentially trying to decide what is fake and what is not. It's a very hard problem. But in the long term, by the time this kid becomes as old as you, he would not trust his eyes. He would never trust something just because he saw a video. That's the thing that's a problem for you guys, because we tended to trust our eyes. And as this technology progresses, we will realize that you can't trust your eyes, you can't trust your ears, everything needs to be cryptographically signed before you can trust it. It'll be a new world. He will be able to live. It's you guys who are going to have trouble because you have come up to this point believing your eyes.
然后所以的话，针对这样的一个问题，就是我无法看出到底什么是真的，什么是假的。针对这个问题的话呢，我有做一个初创公司哈，我们就是专门发展一种技术，叫做现实的保卫者，因为这真的是一个非常重要的问题。在我们这一代，可能的话呢，我们眼见为实，耳听为实哈，但是到了你们这一代的话呢，已经不可以，就是做不到这样了。不知道什么，不能相信自己见到，不能相信自己听到，所有的东西都要通过加密签名，你们才知道它是真的哈。所以这真的是一个很大的问题，你们这一代的大问题。
So in many ways, it looks like so there is this idea called Pandora's box. That's Pandora, who opened the box and all the demons came out. This is very well known in Western mythology, and there are other cultures also have this. It almost looks as if we opened a Pandora's box with the AI technology, because there are many good things that can happen, many bad things that can happen. But I want to kind of end on a positive note that if you read Pandora's box, the actual story, after all the demons disappear, go away, Pandora finds hope in the box. Go back and look up Wikipedia. Everybody only remembers the demons that are coming out. Nobody remembers the hope. There is hope as long as you are aware of both positives and negatives of AI technology. And that's where I'll stop. Thank you for your attention.
最后的话，我想跟大家讲个潘多拉的这个盒子的故事哈。大家都知道，现在 AI 的话呢，其实就像我们打开了潘多拉的盒子一样，好的不好的全部都出来了。但是最后的话呢，我还想以这样子我们今天的讲座呢，有一个非常正面的一个结尾，那就是大家如果是很多人把故事看到这儿就不看了，但如果你继续看下去啊，上维基百科继续看下去，会发现，当这个盒子打开，所有的这些魔鬼都跑出来之后的话，潘多拉再看盒子，里面有希望。谢谢大家。
Thank you.
好，非常感谢教授精彩演讲。我们这个给教授准备带个小礼物，两位同学跟教授上来。班长，16级班长，15级派个代表上来。旁边吧，旁边还是什么？这个。来吧。旁边上来吧，上来。
They have this gift to present to you.
That's more good. Okay. We're from Shanghai, also we're from. 前面来，班长到前面。
到前面拍照。
拍个照吧。
Wow, that's beautiful.
It's made of silk. It's about like.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you very much. So normally I have to carry them from China, so now this is easier.
It's real. It's real.
Of course, true.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So lovely. Thank you. And I just want to add that if there are questions that anybody has, you can reach me through WeChat. I'll put up the audio as well as the slides on WeChat if any of you want to get that. Because I actually recorded her audio too. So
You have to pay me the host.
the 7 people that take it down, yes,
对
indeed.
他
Yeah.
假如说的话，大家有什么问题的话，都可以通过 WeChat 来联系他。大家在 WeChat 里面会放下他刚才录了音哈，放上那个录音哈。
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. You done? Okay.
Do you have any question about parking or getting parking?
No, I'm fine.
It's
I know. This is my university.
Oh, okay.
I know what.
So I just send you a WeChat request, and but
Yeah, just write your name that way because
Oh,
one
okay.
problem is I won't know.
Yeah.
That's the one problem I have.
I may put my name.
May I
from
sometimes-
ASU. Yeah.
So can you tell them that if they ask for WeChat contact, they should put their English name also in, because mostly the contacts are in Chinese letters. I don't know who I'm saying yes to.
OK，如果大家要加教授的这个微信的话，记得的话呢，把名字就是在那个改下面加英文哈，要不他不太看得懂中文的名字啊，加个英文在上面。
Okay, from ASU.
Thank you.
WPC.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
后面汉语批评后面加个 ASU 或者 WP 凯瑞，咱们学校他就知道哦，听完这个讲座之后再跟他联系。
Okay. Good. Okay, great. Thank you very much. And I hope you are going to travel a lot, right, in the summer?
I'm generally traveling. I mean, summer I'm around. This summer I'm actually around.
You're actually.
I mean, but I might go to actually Macau. There's like a international joint conference in AI in Macau, so I might be going there. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe if sometimes like I may like contact you to visit your lab.
Sure,
And
that's fine.
maybe
We are all here. Sure, we're all here. There's no problem. Okay.
Yeah, my wife actually works in the Biodesign Institute. She's
okay.
in the Carey Health Science, and she does like a genomic analysis.
Oh, okay.
And it kind of relates. It's really about kind of relates to like artificial intelligence.
Yeah, basically, because those are kinds of things.
Medical
So
science.
for the areas for which there was no explicit knowledge in particular, certainly yes, that's the way it has been.
Yeah.
We don't know how to look for patterns, and so you train. The problem is they can agree with you on the patterns and might be doing some crazy things. So, for example, if I give you something which said, dog, and then said ostrich, in this case you knew. But imagine they were X-rays.
Yeah.
You won't know. You won't know what you're supposed
I
to.
think
So you
there's a-
believe the machine rather than
There's a
yourself.
papers like the authors create like a hacking situation like to manipulate the images.